So Christians believe that they are going to be judged by God after a literal physical death, after they literally die. Well, in actuality, the truth is that this is symbolic. This is allegory, okay? When it comes to talking about things after a literal physical death, it's speculation, okay? It's just speculation. So in order to make sense of it and not live your life in fear of God's wrath and judgment, what you need to do is have a true understanding of self, who you really are and who you are not. First, you have to understand that what it means by dying is it means that you are letting go of your ego. Your ego is dying. Your false self is dying. You're coming into light. You're realizing who you really are, okay? You are not those things that keep changing. You're not, your likes and your dislikes and your opinions. Okay, you're not those things, because those things, they change, they come and go, but who you really are is pure awareness, pure consciousness, pure light, experiencing those attachments, okay? All these things that you accumulate that create your identity, that you take on as an identity, are not who you are. But that's the rock that's talked about in the scriptures. That rock that's immovable is your core self that never changes. It's always the same. Your true self should never change, okay? The false self is the only thing that changes, even physically, okay? This physical body, it's deteriorating, and in all actuality, we're dying every second. We've been dying since birth, so every day we're being judged. And this book of life that we're judged by is not opening up after we die for God to judge us. It's being opened now, and it's being written now, and God is judging us according to what we are putting in that book as it is being written, okay? So the way that God judges us is through cause and effect. All right. He judges us through cause and effect. Those are his judging tools. So if you smash your thumb with a hammer, then the judgment of that is going to be pain and suffering. So you just have to learn that we're being judged right now. And your body is a temple, okay? Know ye not that ye are the temple of God? You are the temple of God. God resides in you. God does not reside outside of yourself, okay? So once you understand that you are literally the temple, okay? You are symbolic of this temple and what happened in the temple, right? We know from the scriptures, animal sacrifice took place in the temple. It wasn't these secret teachings, all this stuff. What it was is animal sacrifice, okay? And they were sacrificing animals to appease the gods, okay? They wanted to be in God's favor, so they would sacrifice animals. So how are you sacrificing animals inside of yourself, your temple, right? How are you doing that? The way that you're doing that, this animal that you're sacrificing in your temple is your lower carnal self, your false self, your ego self, right? That is prone to all of these worldly attachments and addictions and all of these cravings and desires and misunderstandings and confusion. All these things that you accumulate as your false self is an animal, and you are sacrificing it at God's altar so that you can come into light and true understanding of yourself. And here's the thing, when you finally understand who you really are, that you are not this false identity, you are not the ego, when you finally understand that, your judgment is heaven in here. It's a peaceful life, okay? Because you're not toiling in duality anymore. You're not letting it be the factor and the thing that determines how you feel. You've taken the reins. You've taken control. You're able to understand it better, what reality is and what your illusion of self is. So your judgment will be heaven. You get to go into heaven. You get to enter heaven here on this earth. Now, if you don't wake up to your true self, if you don't find out who you really are, if you don't realize that the ego is running your life, it's ruining your life, then you are going to be in hell, and that will be your judgment in this life. You're going to experience hell as a literal experience, okay? So that's the first thing you need to understand about this whole dying and being judged thing. So you have to die the false self, your ego, let it go, right? Now, after this life, after this physical life, when you physically die, it's just speculation. We can't really say what happens after this life. That's how we know that the scriptures are symbolic and they're allegory, okay? And so we have to find the deeper meaning in this, this existence and in the scriptures. So people will, often use things to try to prove an afterlife by like near-death experiences, okay? Things like that. I died, I saw my family, all these different experiences. But here's the thing, is near-death experiences are not reliable because they all vary. They're all different depending on the person's, the way they were raised, the way they believe. It all makes a difference, and sometimes people don't even see their family. They don't even see what they think is, a Christian biblical sort of perspective of the afterlife. Some people will claim that the afterlife is just this big grid that, we're all connected as one. So this light, a lot of them, there's just so many varying. It's not a good measuring rule stick to determine if it's actually real or not. So throw that out the window, because in all actuality, nobody knows. We don't know what really, goes on in the mind whenever we go unconscious. Whenever the brain is deprived of oxygen for long periods of time, we don't really understand what effect that has on our mind. I mean, the scientist, neurologist, they might be able to figure out the effect that it has on the brain, but they don't know about the mind. What are people dreaming, when they are dead, and for a short amount of time. They don't know what the mind is seeing. They don't know if it's an hallucination or what. But so we have no reliable information about afterlife. Nothing there but speculation. So the only way to make sense out of these scriptures is to see them in an allegory perspective, okay? So to be able to be judged accordingly, how you want to be judged, you have to be able to realize that you have a false self and a real self, a pure self that is the rock, that's never changing. And once you come into understanding of that self, that true self, that pure awareness, that pure consciousness, you're able to live a more peaceful life, a heavenly life, because heaven and hell are within, depending on your perspective and your outlook on life. If you want to live a life of heaven and peace, you're going to have to change your perspective. You're going to have to learn that you are not that ego and that false self which is causing you so much stress. You have to learn to let it go, because it's not really who you are. But if you remain in that perspective of life, if that's your view and you keep that view, then you're definitely going to live a life of hell and suffering. And so that's God's judgment. God's judgment is cause and effect. And I hope that's been edifying for somebody out there. Hey, holler at me. Peace.